Mustang Sally.
Is this one working?
Testing, testing.
Perfect. Test, test, test.
Check, check. Check, check.
Good evening, everyone. welcome. I wanted to thank you for being here despite all the traffic and all the games that are happening out there. We're competing with a lot of things, apparently a lot of traffic, but we're going to get started because it's we don't want to wait for too long. So first and foremost, I would like to really thank you for taking this evening to be here with us. It's really, it's a dream for all of this to be happening tonight because for many months we've been organizing an event that would really bring together people who believe that poverty does have a solution and social impact can be created. And here we are today to really hear some of the best and top experts in this area. I want to share with you that many years ago I was studying psychology, an undergrad in psychology at UCLA, and I really was hoping to contribute to people's well-being in that way. And my sister came to visit me, and she asked me to sit in a class that was a Harvard professor teaching why some countries are poor and other countries are rich. And that class completely changed my whole trajectory. I abandoned my degree in psychology. I moved to Washington, D.C., and I started studying international development and policy, and soon joined a lot of international institutions on projects on how to really transform the world in poverty reduction and in social change. But I was soon very disappointed to see that a lot of the solutions that were being offered were oftentimes almost a crutch. You know, they were helping people, but they were not really transforming people's lives, despite all the millions of dollars being thrown into these projects at international institutions. So after many years of working in this field, I was already living in Brazil, and I decided to put a pause on the career and started my own business in wellness to really contribute in that way. But it wasn't until last year when I moved back to Miami from Brazil that I got introduced to an incredible institution called the Dara Institute that you will learn about today, or maybe you already know them, that really changed my whole perspective again. I saw that a very small group of people with limited resources were able to really transform people's lives in really incredible ways. So not just helping people that were living in vulnerable situations and dealing with poverty and not being able to get a job or not being able to buy medications for their children, but really giving them the tools and the possibility to see a different future for themselves. And then within the 2 years of the program, really stepping out and becoming different, going into a different situation, creating their own life. And so it is really incredible for me to be here today as the Dara Institute's International Development Lead in this new phase where we're trying to share this methodology with all of you, people, individuals, organizations, in order to engage in dialogue about what else is possible. We have other speakers here today who will bring their experiences as to what are the pieces of the puzzle that really transform people's lives, not just putting patches, but really helping people graduate from poverty and creating social impact. And today we have the privilege of having some of the top experts in this field and engaging in a knowledge creation process. With private sector, we have academia, we have the civil sector represented here. And I will let our wonderful, beautiful foreign correspondent from Globo News, Sandra Coutinho, introduce them to you in a better way. So Sandra is the face you probably recognized, especially if you're Brazilian. She has been on the news, tirelessly sharing the news with us. I watched her on many occasions when I was in Brazil. Sandra is the Globo News senior foreign correspondent. She has lived in New York since 2010 and has covered 4 presidential elections, inaugurations, Brazilian president visits, major events like the pandemic, wars, peace talks. She previously held the title of the foreign chief editor with Globo News, as well as multiple other positions, including news anchor and foreign affairs commentator. She has interviewed 2 Nobel Prize laureates, Kofi Annan and Lehman Gaboui, president of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, and high-profile stars such as Oprah Winfrey and Matt Damon, among others. Sandra is very passionate about fighting fake news. And without much ado, I'm going to introduce Sandra to make this evening more exciting and to introduce all the other speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bella. Well, when I first heard about the Dara Institute, it was 15 years ago when my mom retired as a psychoanalyst on her private office, and she decided to work with very vulnerable populations at Dara. So she was offering psychoanalysis to very poor people, and she was so passionate about it because it was a way to give back to society and to really learn what their needs were and how to make change and how to improve social inclusion. The method that the Dara Institute has to do that is to really listen to what people have to say. It's, as we say in Brazil, it's not like teaching, it's not like just giving them fish, it's teaching them how to fish, but by listening to them, by listening to their abilities to do that. And years passed, she worked there, she was passionate about the project, and last year she passed unexpectedly. She was 83, but she was healthy. She walked by the beach as she did every day, and she went home and was watching TV and never woke up from these TV naps that some senior people have. And 1 month later, totally by chance, I met Vera Cordeiro, which is the founder of the Dara Institute, in a fundraising in New York, where I live. And then I understood why my mom was so passionate about the Institute. Because, just by hearing from Vera, you can tell how much she could improve lives of so many people, like thousands of people. It's like 32 years. The project has been going on for so long. And she was able to make this impact on so many people's lives that it is, something was going on. And then it made me just want to be here to try to be a little part, a small part of that. So I'm not here in my foreign correspondent capacity today. It's not about the news. It comes from the heart, my presence here. That's why I wanted to introduce the other people that are presenting today and speaking to you. So Adriana Machado, please. Robert Hacker, Hans Hicker, and Vera Cordeiro. I didn't see her yet. And then she's coming? Oh, she's online. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So we're going to start with Adriana Machado, which is the founder of the Dara Institute and former CEO of General Electric in Brazil. And she's going to talk to us about the role of private sector in promoting social changes.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Thank you for the invitation, Vera and the Dara team, to be here. Thank you, Bella, for organizing this gathering and this event. And thank you, all of you and each one of you, for making time to be here today and join us in this conversation. Because this is not us talking to you, either here or online, but it's actually sharing some thoughts. And we would love to hear you too in the Q&A part. So my role today is to speak a little bit about the role of the private sector in doing good, making change. I was very fortunate and privileged to have worked for big organizations like Intel and General Electric that had the power to make a lot of impact happen across the globe. And I was engaged in projects that mobilized people in different communities and had strategies, so the so-called corporate social responsibility. With Intel, it was all about, I'm laughing here because Bob is next to me and we were kind of rivals at that time. But Intel was all about giving computers to people in general, right? And selling them, yes. But teaching, helping teachers use computers to begin with when nobody was using technology in education. So there was a big angle of education, but also telemedicine and all of the other angles that kind of diverse from the use of technology that we are now more aware of. And with GE being in so many different sectors, so from aviation to healthcare, transportation, and all sorts of energy, we had a little bit more diversified strategy with a corporate social responsibility. But we also had a business strategy that was, I think, the beginning of what we see now as the ESG, Environment Social Governance, with a project called Ecomagination, that in the beginning of the environmental discussion and people being concerned with the impact on the world at large and emissions and pollution already causing alarm in so many parts of the world, GE decided to have a business strategy to build and bring to market products that would reduce emissions, reduce the water consumption, and reduce the consumption of energy itself, creating more energy efficiency. So this was a project that existed from 2005 to 2017. About $20 billion were invested in R&D for new products to be developed, and about $270 billion were revenues from those products on those years. So it was not corporate social responsibility, but really a business strategy and an example of how you can do good with the core products of the company. But back in the days when I was also privileged to work with other companies in the chambers of commerce in Brazil mostly, even before the Sustainable Development Goals, whenever you heard people talk about either philanthropy or corporate social responsibility, it was if you had to pick an area. So pick and choose. Oh, I want to focus on education. So if I focus and I put all my money in one institution only, or in one project only, or in one area only, I can get the most impact, right? So education or health or environment. So they were seen as fragmented boxes. And you chose institutions and you supported them. You could have spread the money a little bit around, but the traditional thinking was to be more effective, you needed a focus. And that still prevails to this day in some corporations and some organizations. But I see that after John Elkington coined the term triple bottom line, and this was 1994, and then he withdrew it from the market in 2018 because it wasn't really doing its job. People were already expanding the way that they measure things, measured results. So measuring not only the financial returns, but also how they were doing in terms of their social impact. And some of the environmental metrics were beginning to But it was still, in 2018, very much the standards for accounting, but not necessarily the transformational idea that John had to begin with. So he then understood that in order for you to really promote change, you need to be systemic. You don't do just for checking the box. You don't just add an accounting procedure or new metrics to say you're doing what you're supposed to do on the side, or you're creating efficiencies. So we now see that there are some initiatives that can produce more impact than others. And you can choose where and how to promote that impact, because there are more options around. And I think that's a little bit of the story that we're going to hear from Vera too. When she began, it was very hard for her to even fundraise, because it was hard for her to explain that she was not focused on health only.
And she
But you can now see that when you start integrating different aspects and not fragmenting, not separating, you produce the impact you desire much more than when you focus directly, laser focus on the problem at hand. So I think that we have evolved a lot in terms of the awareness from the corporate sector and private sector in general to want to get closer to doing good with what they do as a core business. We have the movement for impact investing started in 2007, where you already are trying to identify business projects that produce impact as they are created and implemented. But you also have the B Corp movement in the 2000s, where you create companies, and Dara Institute was created with that intent, to already create the structure around producing impact. So in a nutshell, what I wanted to leave you with is we have evolved in terms of awareness, we have evolved in terms of practices, but the more we can integrate the actions, the more impact we're going to have. So I will leave it for Vera to explain a little bit, but what caught me, and I'm very touched by your story, talking about your mother and how she was able to contribute directly, but what caught me was exactly the systemic approach that Dara Institute has been able to implement. So Vera's story is very inspirational. She started out with her talent, with her unique passion for health and treating people after work in the outskirts of the hospital where she used to work. But she understood that just giving them the health care they needed, the treatment, the diagnosis, the medication, and sending them home wouldn't do the trick. Usually people come back because there are other factors that are interfering. And if you don't tackle all of them, or at least a good number of them, at the same time, and in relation to each other, the impact you're going to produce is much more limited. So Dara is a true example of how you can produce impact by being systemic, by integrating different factors that lead to the conditions that people needed your help to begin with. And I believe that all of us as citizens who donate our own money to institutions and causes, and as organizations or corporations that have a strategy to sell or do good with what we do, or even to do corporate social responsibility on the side, we can be a little bit more effective if we learn from the example of Dara, if we implement this more systemic methodology in the projects we have, and if we align and join forces with each other in these conversations that are already taking place all over the world. I think it is time for us to look at what the patterns that we have lived by have caused and find alternatives that are more regenerative, that are more collaborative. And the Dara model is definitely inspiring, and I can't wait to get to Vera's part to hear more from her. So thank you so much.
Not only inspiring, but also replicable. It can be done anywhere in the world where there is inequality. The problems can be different, but the solutions can have to come from the vulnerable people that are heard by Dara, which I think is one of the strengths of the Institute. Well, now we're going to hear from Robert Hacker. He's startup director of Florida International University, and he will talk about the transformative power of education in ending poverty and creating social impact.
You realize you gave almost my entire talk talking about your mother and then your last comment.
Sorry.
I can't give a talk without my hands.
Yeah, because we have people online, then they need to hear from the mic, otherwise they won't hear you. Sorry.
I'm a reporter. I can hold your mic.
That's all right. It was just too good a joke. All right. It's nice to be here. Thank you to my buddy even if she did work at Intel. And we've done many of these things before, and she somehow manages to bring out the best in me every time. I don't know how she does it, but she does. Maybe by the selection of the topics. All right. But I actually think the best talk I ever gave, I gave for Bria, Adriana's organization, a couple of years ago. I don't even remember what it was about.
It was so good, you don't even need to know the
Maybe
topic.
creativity, maybe complexity, maybe quantum mechanics, who knows? But it was a really good talk. I was impressed. I don't usually like my stuff. A couple of weeks ago,
Vera's making a sound. I can see her in the mirror like she can't hear or something. Can she? She can hear? Okay,
all right,
sorry.
no problem. A couple of weeks ago, I heard someone speak, and I'll tell you who it was at the end. And they talked about Archimedes. And to refresh your memory, Archimedes was a great ancient Greek mathematician. And he's famous for the saying, "Give me a long enough lever and I can move the world, or I can move the earth." And the speaker proposed that the lever he thought could move the earth was Catholicism. All right. Now, it just so happened he was the Archbishop of Miami. All right. So maybe the answer was not quite as surprising. But I started thinking about this metaphor, and I realized that it has so many ways that it can be applied, especially if you want to have significant social impact. What is your lever that's going to create that social impact? And I think that social impact suffers from people that think too small. All right? I worked on a project that was in 60 countries, and we provided 3 million laptops to children, and I never thought we were successful. A lot of people did, but I didn't think so, because there were quite a few more than 3 million children. But you should all go home and think about, what is your lever? Now, you don't get any guesses. My lever is education. I think of levers as tools, all right? And I was fortunate in 2009 to devote every year since then to working in education. First at MIT and then at FIU. And at MIT, I was really lucky because in keeping with good science and engineering, you have to start with the fundamentals, right? And so I learned the fundamentals of child development and then realized that child development is, almost a roadmap for how people learn. And I've subsequently discovered that the way children learn is the same way you do research properly. And if you're an advocate for the capitalist system, doing entrepreneurship properly follows the same model that children use to learn. That's a different lecture. You have to come back. All right. But this knowledge of fundamentals got me thinking about, if I'm doing education, what are the fundamentals that I need to have in place to really be successful? And so I kind of put together these Lego blocks in my mind that explained it. And the first Lego block, your mother would be very proud of me, was that the children needed to have self-esteem. That the biggest problem with children from underdeveloped economic communities is their self-limiting behavior. And even at FIU, where I now have a day job, I work a lot with students. I probably mentor 60 students a year. It's not part of my job, but I do it because I enjoy it. And the very first thing you have to do is you have to make them realize that they are limiting their behavior and that they have the ability to do much more than they think. The second part of education is realizing that you have to generate self-directed learning, all right? We have so much information, doesn't matter what field you're interested in. You're out of date in a year if you're not self-directed to explore it and to understand it. And what we found in the One Laptop Per Child project all over the world were these examples of self-directed learning. In Uruguay, the students only went to elementary school for half a day. All right, so there were 2 sessions. And what we noticed was kids sitting on the curb outside the school in the morning to get the internet connectivity for their computers because they wouldn't be allowed in the building until after lunchtime, all right? Whenever you have positive unintended consequences, you're on to something, all right? And that's how I knew that we should keep at this 1 laptop per child. Third piece is inclusion, all right? I don't talk about discrimination. I don't believe you understand a problem until you can state it in the positive. So I want to foster inclusion, and I want to talk to people about how do we create equal opportunity for everybody everywhere. And so I talk about inclusion. Now, after I had developed these 3, I felt pretty good. And then I read a book by a Nobel Prize winner named Michael Spence. And Michael Spence got an economics Nobel for introducing information theory into economics. That's another lecture. But information theory basically talks about the notion of asymmetry of information. And the way it works is you can have positive and you can have negative asymmetries. So if I know more than you do, I can take advantage of you. If I constantly have better information and know more, I can consistently take advantage of you, and that makes you poor. And so what I realized was all 3 of these first blocks were great, but if I didn't give people access to information, all right, I wasn't going to succeed. And what I've come to realize, for example, 90% of the minority people that are business owners in certain neighborhoods in Miami are sole proprietors, 90%, which is a very high percentage of sole proprietors. It turns out in those same neighborhoods, 75%, this is good statistics, 75% of these people do not know that banks lend money. 75% of the people didn't know. So if you think about why are these people stuck in sole proprietorships, part of it is they don't have access to capital because they don't know that the banks lend money. Shame on the stupid banks, all right? But that is the connection that I see. And that not understanding that banks lend money is a negative asymmetry of information. So my view is you do not understand your problem, your social problem, until you can identify the negative asymmetry of information, all right? So education is my lever. It's a tool. You need a tool. Second is this point about negative asymmetry. If you have to understand the negative asymmetry of information to really understand the problem. And the third point, what's my third point?
Complexity, always.
No. The third point is you don't understand a problem unless you can frame it in the positive, all right? Now, I think I've taken not all of my time. So I want to ask for a favor, I guess. Last week, I was approached through Google by a company in Mexico. And Google is sponsoring the company in Mexico. And the company is doing Techstars, which is a very well-known entrepreneurship accelerator, all right? So these nice guys from Mexico, backed by Google, doing one of the best accelerators in the world, come talk to me. Sounds like a pretty good proposition. what they have done for 10 years, is they take economically disadvantaged Mexican people and they give them computer programming skills, which gives them job career readiness opportunities. And they've had great, statistics in terms of what happens after they teach these people programming. Now, I don't want you to be distracted by the fact that the Mexicans are crossing the border and now the companies for career readiness are crossing the border. Don't think about that, all right? What I need to find is I need to find somebody, ideally in South Florida, that can network this company into the various communities around Florida that have Hispanic populations where this service would logically help the people. They do it in Spanish today. It's the only language they do it in. I don't think it would be a very heavy lift to take what they teach in Spanish and translate it into English or translate it into Creole or any other language. But I need to find them a partner that will help them build their network of partners, first in Florida, and then, ideally across the United States. Okay, it's not necessary that the partner provide any funding in this exercise. All right, it's much more, we need access to markets, to put it in the capitalist speak, right? I see one lady over here thinking. Thank you. All right, so if anybody has any thoughts on who might be a good partner, all right, after we get to the cocktails, I'd be happy to talk. So thank you again for having me.
So now we're going to listen from Hansley Hickler. He's the CEO and founder of Ellipsis Advisors, and he's going to talk about the business of social entrepreneur, leadership, and social transformation.
I think that's what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, I
Depends what
think
comes
so.
out of my mouth.
Go
I'll
for
start by saying, Oi, Vera. I can see her in the reflection there. Vera is one of the people that changed my life. She introduced me to this whole concept, and I'm very grateful to her for that. There's this concept called shared value that talks about the 3 P's of profitability in business: profit, people, and planet. That we all have an obligation as business people to not only think about the bottom line, but we need to think about the bottom line of the planet and the communities that we serve as business people. And when I tried to explore that a little bit, I met this organization called Ashoka, which supports social entrepreneurs. And I met that guy over there, Bruno, who was a member of Ashoka. And through that, and this organization called YPO, I happen to be the education chair for this organization called YPO. And since I wanted to learn more about social entrepreneurism, I created an event. And I invited Ashoka and some other speakers, and Vera was one of the speakers. She came from Brazil to talk about her business of being a social entrepreneur. And that's sort of how I got into this gig. And, I was a CEO, and I'm doing this, and then I moved back to Asia, and I run this other company, and tried to put that 3 P's of the balance sheet thing into practice. And, there's this thing about being a leader that says people won't trust you unless you're vulnerable, right? Your vulnerability makes your team vulnerable. You become transparent with each other. If you're transparent, you trust each other, and trust is what creates great teams. And so one of the things that I presented to my new management team is, listen, I can't come to work unless I bring all of me to work. And I sort of explained who I am, and I said that social P that I believe in is 2 things: bringing people out of misery, which is what Vera will talk about, and women's education. because for every child that is educated beyond the age of 12, it's exponential, not only what the future of that child will be, that young girl, but also in underdeveloped countries, it's the women that run the show. Actually, it's probably the case everywhere. But, and so the more women are educated in villages, in poor villages, the more you raise the level of the entire village. And so when I became CEO of this company called Agility Logistics, I said my mission is to create a school for girls in every country that we serve. We have 22. I didn't reach 22, but I reached 12 before I left. And what we found was, and I said, this is my thing. And I told my country managers, you can find your thing. We're building a school in your country, but you find your thing that you have a passion for, a social passion for. And it was a really, really great thing. And in many cases, which is what the 3 Ps is about, if you, and you were talking about this, if you have a social mission as a business person and you leverage whatever it is you do with your company to create or to foster that, the two go hand in hand. You can actually make money if you build schools for girls in countries. I won 3 big pieces of business in Indonesia from multinationals, and in my bid to them, I said, by the way, if we get your business, I will build a school for girls in that area. It was a mining company, believe it or not, the first one. And they contributed dollar for dollar. They liked the idea so much. Now, I don't know if I won the business because of that, but I certainly know that that piece had a big impact on them, and so I just really encourage people as leaders that we understand the obligation that we have around this shared value concept. And there's so many ways that we can take our passion, whatever it is, and turn it into good. We have a lot of influence. We have a lot of, we have a lot of resources at our disposal. And so as part of my Ashoka thing, I then met Vera, and I dove right in. Shortly, I think 3 years after meeting Vera, we started working together a little bit through Ashoka, and then I quit my job in Agility and moved back to Florida and started my own business. And one of the things I wanted to do was spend about 20 to 30% of my time with social entrepreneurs. And at that time, I was probably working with 10 Ashoka entrepreneurs all around the world whenever they needed logistics experience. And I very quickly narrowed it down to 2. I wanted to go deep. One was a company called Defy Ventures that helps prisoners integrate into society, and the other one was the Dara Institute with Vera. And I started going down to Brazil, I don't know, 5 times a year and spending time with Vera and her team. And the first time I went there, I was waiting outside of Vera's office, and the door was closed, and her administrator, Marta, was outside, and all I could hear was like this cacophony of arguing, like 10 people, like it sounded like a gaggle of chickens, and it's like, what is going on? You go, they're having their weekly meeting. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a meeting. So I went in there, and they were having a meeting, and I said, Vera, one of the things we need to do is structure this a little bit. This is a business, and a business needs to got to stay focused, and I'm going to help you with that. And Vera said, we are not a business. We are social entrepreneurs. We don't have time for business. And I think 12 years later, she would agree with me that it's both. And it's been a real honor to work with her throughout all that. But one of the other things about social entrepreneurs is that they have, as CEOs, incredible challenges. You think being a CEO is stressful and difficult? Try being the CEO of a social enterprise. First of all, you're usually not selling something, you're giving it away. Your success is people copying your concept and scaling it around the world, right? The Dara Institute wants everybody to use the methodology. And so here you have sort of this conflicting interest, me as a business person trying to tell Vera how to scale her business, and she's like, scale it, I just want to give it to everybody, right? And we're like, yeah, but we need money. Okay, so we need to fundraise. I'm not a salesperson. Yeah, you're a salesperson, right? And so you have to, as a CEO of a social enterprise, sometimes you have these conflicting priorities that you have to give it away. You want to give it away, There's no IP for most social entrepreneurs do not protect their intellectual property. For them, the success is disseminating their intellectual property. And the more people use it, the more people are helped. And Vera will talk to you about that. And so with that comes a lot of complexity, a lot of difficulty. Ashoka spent a lot of time developing resources for entrepreneurs, for social entrepreneurs. The stress, the mental stress of keeping the business alive while you are putting all of yourself out there and changing the world is a really, really difficult thing. You know, it's like I have to make a bottom line in my business. She has to change the world. Who's got the hard job, right? So that's sort of how I think about it. And you know, you're thinking about fundraising and volunteerism. And so, you know, one of the things that I believe in a lot, that I learned from Vera, is this concept of social inclusion. Is that as long as there is a world of the poor and a world of the not poor, the two will never meet. So how do you bring those worlds together? Now, where Vera and Institute of Dara comes from, as Rio de Janeiro, which is one of the most blatant, like, visual manifestations of the social divide. You know, you have the beautiful Ipanema beach, and 2 blocks behind you have some of the poorest people living in the favelas. And so how do, you know, when Vera talks about social inclusion, it's like your mother, right? You know, Vera talks about, like, it's the opium of the well-to-do is to work at Instituto Dara, because I'm not sure if the mothers she helps get more reward than those of us helping the mothers, because it gives you this engagement. I talked to an entrepreneur in Haiti who said that the difference between helping people and creating systemic change is that you have this concept of long-term systemic change. In Brazil, we call it longo prazo. You have to be really looking way, way out to understand what systemic change can do. And many NGOs do really good work, but it's very tactical. So this entrepreneur from Haiti told me when they had the earthquake, airplane loads of T-shirts and jeans and socks was sent to Haiti. Airplane loads, like, you know, for years. And they were helping people, right? Well, there were entire communities wiped out. People who, what did they do? They made clothes and sold it on the street. Same thing in Haiti. Airplane loads for years of chickens got sent so they could lay eggs and they could give eggs for free to the people. Well, there were micro communities of people that had like 2 chickens each, one to eat the eggs and another one to sell the eggs. And these are people that are at the margins of survival. And so here are these NGOs bringing stuff in, and it's not just, you know, for months, it's for years. And in essence, they're destroying these microeconomies. And then they leave, and all those people are marginalized. And so we have to be very careful when we try to make change that we're creating systemic change. And this is why, you know, the work that Vera does with these women, this 2-year plan, is that at the end of the plan, they're standing on their own 2 feet and able to survive on their own. And that's pretty amazing. So, you know, I think social transformation can't really happen without inclusion. That's sort of for me, has become the bottom line after about 15 years of doing this. And if we don't, and it's not just about us going in, helping, and going out, we literally have to bring the community together. And when we do that, we all gain from it. But more importantly, we're actually sewing the fabric of eliminating that social disparity. And that's the only way that you can create systemic change, is when the fabric comes together. Because while, you know, one person's providing the fabric and another one's sewing, and at night they go home, you don't have that change. And this is why I think, you know, when you hear Vera talk about how volunteerism plays such a role in her work with these people, And she probably had 100 chances to say, you know what, enough of volunteers, I actually think I can pay these people. She'll never do that. No matter how much fundraising she does, she will never get rid of this concept of volunteerism, because when people put their heart into something, it sticks and the fabric comes together. So that's.
Now we're going to hear from Vera. I can be here like for 10 minutes introducing her, because with all we heard tonight about her and the Dara Institute, you already know that she built something that is like really amazing and that helped thousands of people in Brazil to get what Hans was saying, social inclusion. Not like just having the fish, learning how to fish and teaching the others to do so too.
I can be here like for 10 minutes introducing her, because with all we heard,
it's reverberating. So, okay, so Vera will talk about the power of beginning, how Dara began, and how far it has come. It all started with a blanket, right, Vera?
A snake pit?
Oh, blanket.
Cadê você? Cadê você?
I don't think she's listening. Is she?
how Dara began and how far it has come. It all started with a blanket.
Yeah.
Yes, I suspect that you are trying to kill me, but I promise I will survive, because it's so much love. And already you talking about Dara, I will add some comments. And but I don't suspect that you are trying to kill me.
Nice talk. Problem context. Systems thinking for stakeholders. Data analysis. Design thinking. Scaling.
So maybe there is a delay. I don't know if you are listening to me. I'm speaking clear to you?
Can she see us?
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank deeply to Sandra Coutinho, to Adriana Machado, Robert, and Hans Hickler, because it's an honor to have all of you in that panel. And you touch my heart. So I will add some comments, because you talked about Dara with such a commitment, and you really knows Dara work. I will try to add some comments. So first of all, I'd like to start with the book that I wrote. The title in English is The Power of Beginning. I will start the explanation about Dara, including my book, because this book started with a problem, and the solution was in the problem. That is the nature of our work. I'm a physician, and I worked during 20 years at Hospital da Lagoa, a federal hospital in Rio de Janeiro. And during those 20 years, 10 of those 20 years, I worked in the pediatric service. And I have my life changed by children with cancer, all kinds of leukemia, infectious disease, and poverty. And I still remember Priscilla, for example. She had pneumonia. She came to the hospital. We treat her. She was released from the hospital. And then 3 months later, she came back to the hospital. So hundreds of children I saw in the same vicious cycle: disease, hospitalization, rehospitalization, and death. It was so clear for me, this vicious cycle, but I have no idea how to break this vicious cycle. I knew that I want to break this vicious cycle, but I have no idea, because all over the world, traditional medical care is based not only in the social determinants of health, but it's based in the physical body. So I understood I have to break this vicious cycle. And to break this vicious cycle, I have to go beyond the hospital walls to create something totally different. So I went to Parque Lage, our headquarters, started in, that was Padre Omir and the social determinants of health. I created a group of physicians, nurses, social workers who choose among the poor, the poorest, and they send to Parque Lage. Parque Lage is a beautiful park in Rio de Janeiro, a walk distance from Hospital da Lagoa, and we stayed there in a stable because 200 years ago, a very rich family lived there, and their horses used to be in the stable, our first headquarters. So I stayed there with 40 volunteers, as Hans told. I love the volunteers. More than 1,600 volunteers passed through the institution. They built the institution, but at that time, we have only 40 volunteers. And I started raffling things from my house. I started raffling, I remember my husband used to work for IBM. He traveled a lot, thanks God. And when he came back from one of his trips, he said, "Where is the clock?" I said, I saved it. So it is chemotherapeutic now. And I was totally out of the status quo because I treat the children in the morning. I went to the stable in the afternoon, and I make this triage group to send vulnerable family to the stable phase, to the stable headquarters, and we start the volunteer to listen very carefully, not only for the disease of the child, but for this, what later I learned, it was the social determinants of health. But at that time, there is no name. And I was very upset. I said, my goodness, who am I? I was a physician in a stable, selling things, and wanting to fight poverty with no resources. So then a friend of mine, João Cláudio, said, go to Ashoka. I went to Ashoka, and I passed through 9 months interview. I was very upset with Ashoka. If they don't trust me, I don't trust them. But finally, when I was elected an Ashoka Fellow, I understood that madness has a name. I was a social entrepreneur. I didn't know the name of the madness, And I remember social workers saying, Vera, you want to work in health, education, housing, income generation, and citizenship, but that is the government program. I said, I am very tired of government. I want the civil society to be the government. So, but as Bill Drayton said, when you start something new, there are dark forces that come to stop you. So we have the same, Dara we are expelled from the park. So we stay in containers and in tents, and we have to have 500 families at that time in those places, containers and tenders, because we didn't want to go out of the park. The neighborhood of this beautiful park didn't want poor people in a park that rich people used to go. So that is a real problem. But I went to the President Fernando Henrique Cardoso, and he signed a decree, and finally he said, now you are allowed to stay in the park. Doutora Ruth Cardoso, our former president, she went to a board member, she built a pink house where we stayed for 20 years. Remember, Hans, you went there many times to give, to send, to share with us your experience. So we stay in that pink house for 20 years. But it's normally, we work, as poverty is a multidimensional problem, we work in a multidisciplinary way in 5 areas. As I told you, health, education, income generation, housing, and citizenship. That is our new headquarters, where I am now today, a beautiful headquarters. So we work in those 5 areas, as I told you. And then we start to expand, because when you create something new, that's those 5 areas that we work in a very integrated way. This is the family action plan. But it's the nature of something new to expand. We were in this table, and other doctors and social workers from different hospitals, they came to visit us, and I said, what are you looking for? We only have papers, we have no methodology. But you know that when you do something new, it's the nature of something totally out of the status quo, to pay attention. And we expand near 23 public hospitals in Brazil. We have the sister organization in 6 states with many names like Renascer, Reagir, Renovar. And we also, we became a public policy in one of the largest cities, Belo Horizonte. So it's very difficult for an NGO to be a public policy, and we became a public policy. And now recently, 2 months ago, we became a public policy in Itu, São Paulo, a city. We are becoming public policy step by step. So the next one, please, Martha, that is one of the rooms of Dara in our new headquarters. You can see in that room, there is psychologists, doctors, lawyers, pedagogue, engineer, architects. And what is the family action plan? The family in nowadays came from 7 places. They came here, and we established with the family goals that they have to achieve. It's not top-down. We co-create goals with them. We co-create what will be in the health area, for example. We say to the family, and they know that they have to vaccinate the children. So they have to prove the next month that will come to Dara that they already vaccinate their children. We teach them that sometimes we transform the house. We go to the house is so falling apart that we build a new house for the family. And normally we build a kitchen, we repair the bedroom where the children are, and that makes a huge difference in their life. And we send them to job training. Next, please. So that is a real case. It's Rita case. So you can see the body language of Rita. Rita, when you see in the left side, when she arrived at Dara, the social worker visited her and took a picture of her. And she was totally miserable in all kinds of, not only regarding money, but she had no information, no self-esteem. She had no money. And you can see 2 years later, the body language of Rita and her son. I think that picture shows everything that we do in Dara. And it was not myself who created the Family Action Plan. As Hans mentioned, Adriana mentioned also, it was a system change in terms of health. We want another way to see health, not only the body, but the environment where people live. It's not a Brazilian problem, it's a worldwide problem. Every place where we treat a very poor family, we have to understand the environment where they live. But I was very I was very unhappy because I didn't have proof that after they were graduated from Dara, if they will come back to poverty. I have no reason to prove that to our board members. So Georgetown University came and they made a very deep research, and they proved that there was a decrease of 86% of the rehospitalization. The income generation almost double. And in terms of only 28% have their own house. 3 to 5 years later from Dara's program, 50% have their own house. And in terms of well-being, when they start in Dara, there was a lot of domestic violence, a lot of problem, And 3 to 5 years later, they describe their life very good. It changed completely. So when people say about sustainability, when government talk about sustainability, say, my goodness, data is a proof that it's possible to, to interfere and to help the family. We don't do, we help the family to understand their future. And they know, they start to have self-esteem and to have their own money. So they change their life. We help them to change their life, but they change their life. Normally, Black women, all the poverty in this world is in the hands of women and Black women. Next, please. So the new area of data is the knowledge area, because we understood that the treasure of data is more than 3 decades of knowledge how to deal with poverty, how to eradicate poverty. So we didn't want to stay the only organization that knows how to deal with poverty. We choose 7 the best in Rio de Janeiro, very recognized institutions, and we established the HUPEB, that we hub to eradicate poverty. And there is a platform, but there is panels, workshops, and many things that we are doing. But the main objective of this area is in 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, to make a great movement of the civil society with business people and government to change the reality of Brazil. Because as you know, you live in Miami and other place, but we are living a not declared civil war. We are being killed in that country. It is very dangerous. And that alone cannot end poverty. But we know people that committed their lives as we committed our lives to eradicate poverty. And if we make a movement of 100 institutions, social organizations, and companies, and the government, we can change, we can be more equality, we can have more justice in that country. So I want to say the impact we did. We transformed the life of more than 85,000 people directly. As I gave more than 54 lectures in 16 countries, many social entrepreneurs, they learned from us, and they took the DNA of our methodology, and they brought the DNA for 4 continents, for the benefit of thousands of people, millions of people. So when people think, where is the Family Action Plan? It's in 4 continents. So they changed the name. It's client-based methodology. Only in South Africa, there is 107 institutions using the DNA of the Family Action Plan. So next one, please. We won a lot of awards, but I'm showing the SCORE Award because the SCORE Award made a lot of difference in our life, $1,200,000, and we spread our methodology because of the SCORE Award, but we won more than 50 awards. But the best award is when the family here, the grandmother or the mother, they hug us. When they hug us and they say, you changed my life, that is everything. Next, please. That I was in Switzerland for a workshop, and there is a man from a bank, and he said, if I have money to give for a social entrepreneur, I will not give for you because you have no focus. You work in 5 years. And Muhammad Yunus, the owner of the Nobel Award in 2006, he hugged me and he said, this man never saw a miserable person in front of him. Dara Institute creates a very powerful methodology to improve the poorest among the poor. And to end my presentation, I love people who live near me doesn't want to listen to that statement anymore. And I will speak with my poor English what Margaret Mead, the famous anthropologist, says: never doubt a very committed group of people because they can change the world. Indeed, they are the only one who has changed the world. Thank you very much.
Now you can address any questions to any of the 4 people in this stage and for Vera.
But while they're warming up, I just would like to make a comment here. So you could see from Vera's presentation that this has been a long journey. So she has learned from her attempts and her mistakes, has received support from different organizations. And the key to her success is exactly the way of dealing with a complex issue in a decentralized way and tackling it at the same time from different fronts, so creating synergy. So we have Madeleine here who works with the children's movement. And we have different organizations here who are interested in specific problems. But I think that one thing we can learn from
is exactly the way of dealing with a complex issue in a decentralized way and tackling it at the same time from different fronts, so creating synergy. So we have Madeleine here who works with the children's movement. And we have different organizations here who are interested in.
Sorry about the delay. And I just wanted to say that that what Vera explained was very brief. You have books in front of you that will explain a little bit further the details, and we're here to have a conversation. So the aspect of becoming a public policy was also something she mentioned that I would really encourage you to ask more questions about, because when you join forces with other organizations and you tackle the issue from different parts or different fronts at the same time, and you can become a public policy to help the government also integrate funding and action from different fronts, you can sustain action for a long time. And that's what the methodology is all about. So I just encourage you to ask questions about that, because she has a great deal of experience doing that from her perspective and point of view.
It's ghosts.
Oh.
The ghosts want the room, so, you know, they're going to disturb you.
So I think you're going to hear me again? No. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Katie. I found this event on Eventbrite like an hour ago.
Please, come here.
Okay, wow, okay, here we go.
Yeah, join us, so Vera can see you if you want to turn around and face the camera.
Hello, Vera. I'm Katie. I actually was on a flight from Peru a couple hours ago. I live in Huanchaco, Peru, and I am 10 years ago I started a nonprofit called Hands on Peru, and 7 years ago we built a public health community center in Huanchaco, and I've seen also lives transform through this community center. We work with universities all around the states, Switzerland, Yale University, NC State, UNC. We're getting the attention now of the local government and of the local health, MINSA, Ministerio de Salud, that actually the godfather of our clinic has like a really high position now in Lima, and so he's trying to help us. And my question is, you know, I've put in 10 years of work and 7 years of working directly with the community, and I feel like I've created this like beautiful like plan, like scheme, but then there's always that, really what does it take to get to that next level of like real large scale impact? And seeing Vera's presentation and reading today about the Dara Institute, I'm like really inspired, because I feel like what we've done can be replicated and can get more, but what what can I do? Or like, what is the main piece of advice to kind of take it from like 4th to 5th gear, or from 3rd to 4th gear, I guess, in this case? Thank you.
Thank you. Vera will try to answer.
You wanna take a stab at it?
Go ahead.
Well, Vera had a similar problem. You know, I can't tell you how many discussions we have and said, you got to get out of this house in Parque Lage, we got to expand. And, you know, you've at the time, I think it was 50,000 families impacted, and, you know, we want to impact millions, not go from 50 to 100,000. And so this is how the Dara Institute came out, is the families can come to you and you can help them. But how do we help the families that are not in Rio, right? And how do we cascade the methodology? So I don't have the answer for you other than it's a leap every time. It's not an incremental thing. So for us, it was, we needed a new headquarters, and we got a school. We funded an old school, and I wanted an auditorium, which we have. Why? Because I wanted the Dara Institute to be like the Davos of social inclusion. I want people to come from all over the world to Vera's headquarters and hear people talk about social inclusion. And so the journey we're on right now, which is promulgating the methodology around the world, there'll be another step. There'll be a Davos of social inclusion in Rio, because people will congregate, and so you have to have these different, it's like omni-channel marketing. You have to have different channels. You're working with the families hands-on, you're sharing the methodology, which is the education piece, and you're bringing experts in, like here. This is part of the Dara Institute, right? This is the part of you guys starting the Davos thing right here, right? And so you have to think along different dimensions of how can I reach people. And even that thing that you started that's working is, maybe there's a digital bites element that cascades it around the world or whatever. But I'm happy to spend time with you and talk with you and think through that stuff, because that's sort of what we do at Ashoka.
And I would add, I don't know, I think Vera wants to add something there, but before she goes, you mentioned the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. So what Dara does, Dara kind of brought it to itself, the role of giving the constant support needed and not depend upon the government to do so. So when she began, she didn't wait for the government. She found a way to create the structure that would provide that service. So when she talked about health, she was talking about medication, so diagnosing the disease and offering the medication, the nutrition, motherhood, early education and early child care. So everything is kind of included in this health approach. When you're talking about education, you're also talking about, okay, how to deal with if you have young kids, but also adolescents. Or how about the parents that need to also learn how to read and write to be able to get better jobs. So it's all integrated. When you talk about income generation, what is that talent or that purpose that mother or father or older brothers want to pursue, and how do you help them get trained and get skilled so that they can either start their own cooking business or salon, but also, like Vera has this great example, there was this one person that wanted to fix air conditioning, and they found a way to teach that skill to that person so they could do something they also loved and were motivated to continue doing, so that they could get the next level status for the whole family. So it's one thing is integrating the action, so you can start with outside partners, but the more you can integrate the connections of the different parts, I think it will work better. Sustaining it over time, but something that Vera mentioned that is key is the commitment. So you have professionals on one side suggesting things to be done, but you have the family in the center committing to things that they will do, because you don't convince anybody of anything. They have to be convinced by themselves, but they can be supported in that journey to get there.
I would say one more thing too. However many people you think you're helping, it's probably 10x that. You know, I worked with Vera, with a woman in one of the favelas, and they renovated her house. They taught her how to be a hairdresser, renovated her house. Downstairs, she had a hairdresser. She employed her 2 sisters. So the work that Vera did and her team did with that one person was 3 families were brought out of misery, right? And so it's very, when you work in communities that have need, the viral effect of help is really exponential. And so, you know, we talk about, oh, we want to change the world. Well, sometimes the world is a community, and the impact you can make in a community by focusing on that community, you know, like I teach entrepreneurs, I help entrepreneurs, and, you know, they work in Brazil, and they say, oh, I want to go to Mexico, I want to Peru, I want to expand. I'm like, wait a second, Brazil, if you put all of your energy into Brazil, maybe that's the community that you can serve and really make an impact. You know, if I can impact 80% of the people in one community versus 10 in 1,000, am I helping more here or here? So I would encourage you to also understand where can I play best to have the most impact? And I guarantee you're having more impact than you think you are, always.
And another thing that they helped create, it was this knowledge hub. So definitely, let's see how you can get in touch with them and take advantage of this 32 years of work that they have already done, and see the learnings, the lessons, and how you can apply some of the lessons learned, and kind of leapfrog the way out into your community and beyond.
Sometimes Wanchaco's a little isolated. I'm like, what's
Yeah,
going on up in
no,
here?
connect, and I'm so glad you came. So thank you so much for coming here, and we'll definitely talk more. Thank you. Vera, you want to say something?
We also knit hats.
All right.
Very nice.
I don't know if I understood very clear your question, but I have a lot of lawyers that already explained, Adriana and Hans explained how we deal with the problem and how we grow. But what I have to say to you is, before you think about how to scale, I think it's very important to prove the concept. You have to deal, for example, if you are dealing with poor children or poor people, you have to try many things, empowering them, doing fundraising to hire new doctors, new psychologists. You learn with the problem. Is that I started my explanation talking about the power of beginning, the book, because the title explains that the solution is in the problem. So you have to go deep in the problem that you are trying to solve. And step by step, you are trying to understand what's the best path, the best way to overcome that problem. It's not easy, because many times you have the idea, for example, I need a new psychologist, but you don't have the money to pay the psychologist. So you have to fundraise to pay the psychologist, but you don't have, to give up to have a psychologist, because you need a psychologist. Although you have volunteers, you need, sometimes the child is very depressed. The mother wants to commit suicide. So you have to hire a psychologist. And that takes time. I think I never believe in some very profound work that deals with poverty that doesn't take time. It took 3 decades to not to be ready, but 3 decades to understand more deeply what will change the life of that child, what will change the life of the mother. And we are already trying to understand more deeply. I think 400 years from now, we are trying to understand more deeply the problem, because the solution is in the problem. And when you find the solution, in our headquarters, we have a bell. The mother, they ring a bell when they finish the program. And everybody cried, because you see when she started Dara program and when she finished. So before trying to scale, the best way to scale is to prove the concept, to prove that you really transform the life of those people. And it was not us. When people come to visit Dara, I always bring a mother to talk about how she arrived at Dara headquarters and how she is now. Because the mother is the best way to explain how she changed her life.
Hello, everyone.
Vera can see you, sure, here in this camera.
Hello, Vera. So my name is Madeleine Takour. I run the Children's Movement of Florida, our statewide advocacy organization for young children. And if I understood correctly, part of the magic of this whole approach and project is about asking questions. And I wonder if Vera in particular, or maybe you all can share, what are those conversations like? Because I think so often when we think about doing the work differently, you can't do it till you realize how simple it is and are inspired by an example.
Well, I know Vera will definitely jump in a little bit, but I just want to remind of two things she already said. So the answer is usually in the problem. And then there's a systems thinker that says the problems don't want to be solved, they want to be understood. So that speaks directly to what you were saying. So the more you find channels to listen and understand what's going on from their eyes, the better response you will be able to provide to them along the way. Yes, yes. But let's see what Vera has to say, because she has experienced that for much more than I have, so I'm sure she'll have something to add.
As far as I understood your question, what kind of conversation we have with the families, with the head of the family. Normally, we talk with the head of the family. And normally, they are woman, black woman. Sometimes there is the father. But as far as I understood your question, I'm not sure if I'm right. You want to understand what kind of conversation each person establish with the family. Is that your question?
I don't know if she's, what she's saying. Yeah. Too much delay.
Yes.
Yes, Vera.
Yes, Vera.
Okay, normally it's a very deep conversation. For example, as I told you, and Hans mentioned many times, and Adriana also mentioned, we work with a lot of volunteers. And the volunteers, they don't have to be psychologists, architects, doctors. They talk from their hearts. So the mothers, they came and they start to talk about their life. I will give you an example. One day, a mother came to Dara in the pink house where we were for 20 years. And she said, I have a problem because my son, he used drugs. He used a lot of drugs. I don't know how to deal with him anymore. I took him to some psychiatrist, but he continues to use drugs. And then the volunteer, she opened her heart and she said, my son used drugs as well. And that was so powerful because I was not there. It was the volunteer and the mother. But the mother, she went out of the headquarters and she didn't know who I am. And I asked her, did you like that organization? What do you like from that organization? She said, I like because the volunteer, I explained the problem of my son with drugs. And she said she had the same problem. So we change ideas, we change experience, what works, what doesn't work. And she invited me to come next week to have more conversation about her experience and my experience. So I'm dealing with a human being. So that's one case. But there's another case, for example, the doctor, Doutora Silvia Cordeiro. Doutora Silvia Cordeiro, she's a doctor. She treats the family, the person in front of her in terms of medical care, but also she is very curious about the life of that woman. She knows, for example, that the woman has hypertension. So she treated the woman with medication, but also she asks questions, key questions. How is your life now? Are you happy in your life with your children, your husband? What are you living now? And then the mother started to speak not for the doctor. She speaks for a woman, a human being, who is a doctor. And then Sylvia understands the whole picture, not only the hypertension, but she understands the whole picture of that mother. And she can refer for job training, she can refer to psychologists, she can refer, to pedagogues. The family needs some education. So the doctors, it's not only the doctor, she go deeply. She have time to deeply establish conversation with the family. Because I normally say that Dara is like Obama say, yes, you can. The family, the head of the family, she arrived here totally destroyed. She said, I'm totally destroyed. My life has no sense anymore. I cannot live. It's terrible to live. I don't have way out. And every person that she speaks, a volunteer, a doctor, a psychologist, a nutritionist, what they say is, yes, you can. Talk more about your life. Tell me, what is your day by day? Then just the fact that she is talking about her life, she's talking loudly. So she understands not only the problem, but the solution. And sometimes the mother came with the solution. And if it doesn't come with the solution, she has 2 years to spend in the institution. And she see, many times she see, for example, one mother that she's in another level. She came destroyed like her. She didn't want to leave, but 1 year later, she's in another position. And that mother that is 1 year in front of her, talked with her. And she said, I am you 1 year later. So she can see that she can change.
These mothers commit to a 2-year plan. 2-year plan, all your kids go to school every day. 2-year plan, you come once a week, twice a week, and you meet with us. 2-year plan, you're going to learn a profession. And so it's a lot of give and take, and it's a lot of themselves that they have to put in there. And they come in with a lot of insecurity, and they come out standing on their own 2 feet. Nobody's writing them a check at the end of this. They're standing on their own 2 feet. You saw the Georgetown discussion. And that happens because it's accountability. It's a family action plan. We help them with the plan, but they have to execute it. And so the conversation, and at the beginning it's very immature. I love what Vera said about, because I saw that all the time. The mothers are sitting together and they're at all different levels of the action plan. And so those conversations, they're always about accountability, always about meeting your commitments, which in many cases, no one's ever talked to them about that. They go home, their spouse is beating them up. They don't have identity cards. In many cases, the government doesn't even know they exist, right? There's no house number on the door. They live in these favelas. They have no support structure. And so Vera's team teaches them, you come here for support, but you've got to give yourself your support as well, right? It's a give and take.
Yeah, Deepak. Yeah, you want to come here, please?
Sorry, just a sideline. You're working with families. You're working with families. You're working from within a structure that is already poor. But there comes a time where it has to interact with the government. So I know, for example, in healthcare, that's my background, that they identified 3 things that is very important. One is clean water. The other is sanitation. And the third, interestingly enough, was the right type of food for a pregnant mother, because the child was often born chronically ill and then carried it through. So how successful has your model been in just getting across from within to using the infrastructure that is actually required, which a government has to put into place? So have you found that it has attracted people? Have you found that there's been an interaction? Have you crossed that bridge? Or do you have a formula within your model to make that work?
So I can answer that. So the approach is very comprehensive and touches all those points you mentioned, Deepak. So when one of the pillars is housing. So when they identify in the beginning of the plan that there is an issue with the housing, they have a team of architects to help make sure that they have the right infrastructure in place over the 2-year plan. They will also tap into any existing government program to help make the connection and benefit that family for, in case the family doesn't have any access to that and the program exists, how do you help them make sure that they get that? But they don't wait for that. So that's why the fundraising, the money that they can raise through philanthropy is very important, because that's where the money goes to little fixes in houses so that you can get sanitation, or even teaching them how to keep the house clean for hygiene purposes, or offering them a conversation with nutritionists and helping them understand how to buy the right food with the money they have or with the budget they have, or how to be creative in terms of cooking so that you can offer your kids the different things by cooking differently and making sure you have all the nutrients you need. So it's a real comprehensive approach. They will do what they can with the resources they have. They will tap into the existing resources of governments. And when they say that they become a public policy, they put everybody in the government around the table to make sure that all the programs are integrated and they can listen and hear to each other's demands. So it is a whole lot of the connecting, but being very comprehensive in terms of the different issues, because it's human people. And just like we have different needs, everybody, especially coming from vulnerable communities, have too. And they have striking needs that people don't talk to them about. I was just reading a report that says that we are about 8 billion people living in this world. 1 billion people, according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, is suffering from some kind of mental health illness. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? 1 in 8 of us have that. So can you imagine in more vulnerable communities? So a comprehensive approach that really listens and that includes the professional help and the volunteer trained to provide that and to make the connections with existing programs is key.
I would add one thing. In many of the less developed countries, I hate to talk about Brazil like this because, 8 years ago it was the 6th largest economy in the world and 95th in social inclusion. So, but in many cases, it is, in the area of social inclusion, it is not one of the developed countries, unfortunately, of the world. But Vera doesn't take money from the government, because in these countries very often, and unfortunately Brazil too, a lot of corruption comes with taking money from the government. And so Vera very early on said, my model is I want to be able to stand in front of everybody and say, we have a business model where the money that we get goes into the community. She publishes a report on that stuff. So on one side, some of the funding that's very often available in countries where you're solving these problems, it comes with a lot of baggage. On the other hand, to answer your question, and Vera can answer this more, it's just one example, but the state of Belo Horizonte has introduced the Family Action Plan as part of its public policy. They've embedded that, and it's been that way at least 15 years, I think, if I remember correctly. So they do work with the states, but again, multifaceted for sure.
And in the other continents that have adopted the methodology, there are different shapes. But again, it's to the extent that you can guarantee the professional support in some shape and form, but all acting concomitantly so that you can create the synergy and you don't leave those blind spots. So when you're dealing with people, right, you have different needs and you need to make sure your approach is as comprehensive as possible. If you can offer it all like Vera does, and she has a 501c3 here in the United States, if you want to donate money to that, please, Isabella can have information. So she makes sure that she has that coming and make sure that this methodology can not only be applied in Brazil but elsewhere. And as I said, she is creating this knowledge hub to share the learnings with anybody who wants. And by offering your questions and your learnings also, this will multiply in a very nice, in a nice way. So I think, I don't know if you want to go back and closing. I think we're running out of time here, and maybe...
Maybe Vera wants to close it. Vera? No? So there is a video we want to share with you, right?
So right now, just to close, we're going to see a very quick video with the beneficiaries sharing their stories. It's a very quick one, and then we will close with a cocktail, but I will say a few words after the video.
My goodness. I started saying that you want to kill me. But finally I survived on the battle.
Aqui a família é novamente entrevistada e é feito junto com ela. A gente pergunta, como é que você se imagina sustentando sua família? E à medida que a família vai progredindo, ela vai percebendo que ela é capaz de trabalhar em saúde, educação, moradia, renda e cidadania. Então são traçados metas para essas famílias, né? A gente vai dar comida, remédios, mas em contrapartida elas têm que fazer cursos profissionalizantes e elas sabem que elas têm que gerar renda para se autossustentar numa média de 2 anos.
Quando eu encontrei o Dara, eu estava me sentindo derrotada. O Dara, ele me dá todo o suporte, conversa com o psicólogo, assistente social, é orientação daqui, orientação dali.
Que aí eu conheci o curso de gastronomia sustentável e através desse curso eu vou conseguir gerar renda, tenho aprendido sobre empreendedorismo. Hoje eu tenho um anseio e muita vontade de criar meu próprio negócio.
Porque se não fosse aqui, eu não tinha condições de ganhar o leite do Miguel, tudo, e o apoio de todas essas mães. Thank you, everyone. Is it okay? Good. I just wanted to thank everyone for being here again. Can you turn off the I don't like hearing my voice twice. Okay. Can I? Well, anyways, it's going to be with a little echo. That's okay. But I just wanted to thank you for being here. I want to thank the board of directors for helping us organize this event. I want to thank all of the speakers for the very inspiring conversation, for Vera staying up late. It's 2 hours later in Brazil, for sharing her inspiring story with us, and for the Idea Center for opening the space for us to be able to host this. I also hope that you got inspired that change is possible and that you can be part of the solution. And there are a lot of things, a lot of ways that we can all contribute in all the different sectors. So without much ado, I want to invite you to our little cocktail. I hope you can stay for a little longer. And if you feel interested in getting in touch with us, there are business cards where you can get in touch with me, with Dr. Vera, with all of us. And if you also feel in your heart that you would like to help financially, a lot of our work still depends on volunteer efforts and contributions and donations, or if you know of anyone that would be interested in doing that as part of the Thanksgiving, November, we're always accepting those. So thank you very much. And we're new here in the United States, and we're hoping to grow and share this methodology with the rest of the world. So if you know of any ways that we can do that in a better way, get in touch with me. Thank you again for being here, and we'll meet outside. One other thing, sorry. The person that can be accepting donations or volunteers is Alejandra. She volunteered to have all the information. If you're interested, she'll help us. Thank you, Alejandra.